the shadow in the woods.
I always thought the woods behind my house were enchanting, with their tall trees and chirping birds. But ever since I moved in, I felt like I'm being watched. It started with rustling leaves and snapping twigs, but then I began seeing things. A shadowy figure darting behind trees, eyes gleaming in the dark. And now, it's coming for me. I tried to tell my parents, but they brushed it off as my imagination. They never believed in the supernatural, even when I showed them the scratch marks on my window. So, I decided to take matters into my own hands. Armed with a flashlight and a can of pepper spray, I ventured into the woods.
The deeper I went, the more I felt like I was being swallowed by the darkness. The trees seemed to close in on me, suffocating me with their branches. And then I saw it. A pair of glowing eyes peering at me from the shadows. I froze, and the eyes disappeared. I turned to run, but I tripped on a root and fell to the ground. When I looked up, the shadowy figure was right in front of me. It had a human shape, but its skin was as black as tar, and its eyes were pure white. It lunged at me, and I sprayed it with pepper spray. It recoiled, screeching like a wounded animal. I took that chance to scramble to my feet and run back home. But I could hear it following me, its footsteps pounding on the ground. When I burst out of the woods, I collapsed on my front porch, gasping for air. My parents rushed out to see what was wrong, and I told them everything. To my surprise, they didn't brush it off this time. They seemed almost afraid. The wind howled through the trees as I trudged through the dark forest, my flashlight barely illuminating the path ahead. I had foolishly thought it would be a good idea to take a shortcut through the woods to get back to my car, but now I was hopelessly lost. The only thing I could hear was the crunch of the leaves beneath my feet and the occasional hoot of an owl. As I stumbled over a fallen log, my flashlight flickered and died. I was plunged into complete darkness, and I froze in terror. I felt like something was watching me, lurking just beyond my line of sight. Suddenly, I heard a twig snap behind me. I spun around, my heart racing, but there was nothing there. I tried to calm myself down, telling myself it was just an animal, but deep down I knew it was something far more sinister. I started to walk again, more cautiously this time, but every sound made me jump. The trees seemed to loom over me like twisted hands, and the shadows danced in the corners of my vision. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Finally, I saw a faint light in the distance, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I made my way towards it, but as I got closer, I realized it wasn't a streetlight or a house, but a flickering campfire. There were shadows moving around it, and I could hear voices whispering in the dark. I tried to back away quietly, but my foot hit a rock and the noise echoed through the clearing. The whispers stopped abruptly, and the shadows turned towards me. I was frozen with fear as the shadows coalesced into shapes. They were tall, humanoid figures with glowing eyes that glinted in the firelight. They started moving towards me, their steps slow and deliberate, and I knew I was trapped. I don't remember how I got away from them, but I woke up the next morning in my bed with no memory of how I got there. The only thing I knew for sure was that I never wanted to go back to those woods again. The suspense and fear that had gripped me that night stayed with me for a long time, and I couldn't help but wonder what had happened in those woods. What were those shadowy figures, and what did they want from me? I never did find out the answers to those questions, and I never wanted to. The memory of that night was enough to keep me away from those woods forever. From that day on, I never ventured into the woods again. But every night, I could feel its eyes watching me through my bedroom window, waiting for its chance to strike. Horror stories that happened to me. Another day, another story.